Jumping, even if you don't play basketball or volleyball, is a really important skill to work on. Not just jumping higher, but jump mechanics and your ability to land well. Jumping is more than just a foundational part of an athlete's athletic ability in a general sense, but it's also a big part of a lot of training concepts when it comes to sports performance. If you don't play a jumping sport per se, it can be really easy to dismiss the need to be able to jump high because you're not going to use it. But that's not actually true. The higher you can jump means the more lower body power you have, which translates to sprinting and being more explosive in everything you do in sports. The easiest way to show how this is true is through the concept of triple flexion to triple extension. Triple flexion is when three joints of the lower body, the ankle, knee, and hip, go into flexion, as you see here when loading a jump. Then to jump off the ground, those three joints go into extension. An athlete that can more explosively go from triple flexion into triple extension will be able to jump higher. But an athlete doesn't just go from flexion into extension when jumping, they do so when sprinting or changing direction, or pretty much every movement in some way, shape, or form requires a controlled and forceful flexion into a quick and aggressive extension. As I said in the last video on change direction, jump higher, run faster, jump higher. Now, let's get into the basics of being able to jump higher. The first thing we have to talk about is mechanics, and more specifically at this point, the mechanics of jumping off of 2 feet straight up. Your feet or platform should be in a hip width stance. Think about placing your feet directly underneath the pointy bones in the front of the hip or pelvic bone. Your feet should be straight, and as you reach up high in the air, you go to the balls of your feet. Then as you load your jump, your arms should swing down hard and back behind you while the weight shifts to your heels and your back stays flat. Here initially when working on mechanics, it's important to work on the arm swing, keeping the knees over the ankles, nice flat back, and loading the legs. Then progressing over time to jump higher, it's important to be able to load as much force down by swinging your arms down hard with proper technique. This will allow you to take the force that you loaded down, utilize the stretch shortening leg cycle on the legs, and jump really high. The more force that can be loaded down into the jump initially relays back to being able to jump higher. More force down equals more speed out, and thus a higher jump. After coming out of the load of a jump, you basically just reverse the pattern by again going from triple flexion into triple extension. Importantly, swinging the arms hard, back up and straight up. You go where your arms go. So if you throw your arms straight up, you go up higher. If you throw your arms slightly forward, you'll go slightly forward and not as high. Jumping straight up really isn't that complicated when it comes to mechanics, but it takes practice to master it, and especially when moving at game speed. The loading process is incredibly important when it comes to the height of the jump, but even more important is the landing. Being able to land a jump well is not only important when it comes to jump training specifically, but also correlates to reducing the risk of injuries when jumping and decelerating/slowing down in your sport. Being able to land a jump off 1 foot or 2 feet is the foundation to most deceleration training. The better you can land a jump, the safer you'll be as an athlete, because it really just boils down to your ability to absorb force. And the number one time that an athlete typically sustains an injury is when cutting or landing, that force absorption area of sports. Proper technique for landing includes your knees out over your ankles, a flat back, using your arms, and really focusing on absorbing the force through the legs, your glutes, your hamstrings, and your quads. A really important and common issue to talk about when it comes to jumping and landing is what are your feet doing? Especially if you're flat-footed, your feet have a big influence on what the rest of your body does in motion, and addressing this issue is imperative when it comes to injury prevention. When you load a jump, or when landing, you want to do this concept that's called spread the floor. In the video here, I'm in a good position with my knees over my ankles and my feet screwed in the floor. This is me spreading the floor. Think about having a piece of paper underneath both feet, and as you go to load and or land a jump, you want to act like you're screwing your feet into the floor and ripping that paper apart without actually turning your feet. This locks you into a strong and stable position that is safer for the knees, ankles, and even lower back over time. In this next clip, you can see me going into some bad positions for the lower legs. Knees not over ankles, and the arch of the foot is collapsing. Being able to maintain a strong arch is important. Another way to think about this when landing is imagine you have a piece of fishing line attached to both ankles together. When you land or load, you want the fishing line to stay taut. If you collapse the arch, turn the foot too much, let the knees and or ankles roll in, the line won't be straight or taut anymore. This not only will limit your jumping height and ability over time, but it will increase the risk of injury over time, whether it's an acute injury or like a rolled ankle or an ACL tear, or a chronic one like a stress fracture in the back, which is all too commonly seen in volleyball players more recently. Knees over ankles, feet screwed in the floor, and spread the floor apart. A swing jump, like you've seen me doing, is the base of jump training, but there are so many other variations and combinations that all athletes can benefit from. For example, a broad jump, like you see me doing here and jumping forward, or single leg jumps, being able to do an approach, loading a jump on one leg. More plyometric style jumps where you're bouncing off the ground and working on ground contact time. The nice thing about all of these variations is even though a coach could create thousands of different drills or sequences, the fundamentals and movements stay the same. Once you get the basics down, the rest is just work the pattern and give effort. You can't jump high slow, but you can't jump fast without proper technique. If you've watched this video or any of the other videos, please subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton and costs you nothing. All the edges, social media, the podcast, and other content is in the link in the description below. Go check those out as well. In the next video, we're going to go over strength training. Thank you for watching.